no matter what caliber chef you are.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that was like the most defining moment in my career, is like, this is what I have to do. This is how I do it.
Yeah.
All the pasta, like literally, like everything, like done by hand. Like even the extrusion was like an old Beagley extruder by hand. Like everything was like that. I didn't have the money to get equipment, and I didn't want it. Like I was learning as the restaurant was growing more about pasta, and before you know it, like I'm thrashing an entire 4,000 or 2,000 gram ball of semolina, just orecchiette, in like a half hour, like becoming this like machine, and just had no fucking choice. But it was fucking great. Like it was super great. I got to cook for friends a lot, in the industry, which was really wonderful. And like, I got to show a piece of myself for the first time, like really cooking food that I like, this is what I'm doing. And like, this is what I'm going to do moving forward. Like, this is my path. This is the beginning of me as a chef.
Gotcha.
Everything else I did was like middle school, senior year, college, everything. Now this is like me really starting my career.
So when do you plan on opening anything? Do you have anything in the works?
I've tried. It's hard to gain investment. For me, I'm just not really good at selling myself.
Yeah.
I probably could sell myself as a fucking prostitute before I could raise money to but to the same people that I'm trying to raise money with.
Yeah.
But I'm taking a break on it. I'm allowing myself. I'm gonna help open a restaurant of a friend of mine, and a great opportunity.
Yeah.
It's a pizza place. It's a Neapolitan pizza place.
Oh, dope.
And so, like, I'm gonna do pizza, but there's gonna be some pastas in the menu. It's been around. It's Bufalina. They have a second one that's open right now. Their first one, they lost the space through lease terms, and so we're about to open that in January, and so that's gonna be great for me. And I'm just gonna take a break, like, take my time, like just rebuilding again, slowly working on it, do it the right way, like try to meet the people to support me in opening up this restaurant that I want to do.
Yeah.
And just realizing that, like, some people get to open restaurants when they're younger, and some people it takes fucking forever.
Yeah,
but that's still the goal. Like, it's still the goal, and it's never.
And you can. And it's not this old narrative of like, oh, you're too, past your prime or whatever the fuck. Like, that doesn't matter anymore. Like, when I was coming up, it was like, if you weren't a chef owner by the time you were 40, you were done. Like, that's it. No one cared about you anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you saw all those old cooks that you were like, what happened? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like some people just have other things, other passions. And, just because you haven't opened a restaurant at a certain age doesn't mean you can't. Like, you can Rodney Dangerfield that shit and get famous when you're 50,
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, I think the one thing that I could say now is, like, where I was then with the expectation of, like, I want to open up a restaurant by the time I'm 30. Like, even if that restaurant was successful, like, I wouldn't have been happy. And I would be pulling out what everybody else is pulling out when they're not mature enough in their own shoes, like, as a chef. Like, there are some people who are just from day one, like, they're super talented and they know what they're doing and they already have that maturity. But most chefs, I feel like, they're following away. They're following influences that...
Yeah, it's what someone told you to do.
Yeah.
You gotta go to culinary school.
You gotta go to culinary school,
Don't
you
go
read
to
these
culinary
books.
school, yeah.
It's like, the Noma book came out, and like all of a sudden everybody's doing like food like that, but not knowing how to do it.
Yeah.
There are chefs that knew how to do it, who have the talent, but like young chefs like our age and like our peers, like a lot of them, like they're learning how to do it as they're doing it, in the sense that that's just something that they're copying, and so like I've just learned so much about like what I want, how I am, less is more, the maturity, the kind of like more mentality of like really focusing and knowing like that's it. Like it doesn't need anything. It doesn't need all these garnishes or all these things. Like it's simple, and like that's okay.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't have 1,000 ingredients, and like that's okay.
Yeah. I think we just come from that age of like we're using a lot of ingredients on dishes. When we came up, it was like you had 13 items on your prep list for one dish.
Yeah.
2 of those items took 3 days to make. So it's like, but now, like, and even I saw it at Meadowood, because when I got there, it was a lot of steps, and then after a while, it was just like 2 things.
Yeah. Before you know it, you're like, brining beef to sous vide and then to sear. Now you're like, no, we're just gonna like, reverse sear it or temper it and get perfect, like wonderful beef, and we're gonna grill it the right way or cook it the right way, and it's better this way.
Yes, 100%. I'm glad we're getting away from the sous vide.
Yeah, it's disgusting.
Too much plastic.
Yeah, it's plastic, but it's just never tasted good. Like it doesn't. Like it really doesn't. Like there's not much. This is gonna sound terrible, but like it's just like McDonald's. Like it just doesn't have the same depth of flavor. Like no matter what you put in the bag, no matter what you do before it, like it's just not gonna taste better. Mm-hmm. And like there are certain things that are cool, like the short rib or like that perfection.
Yeah.
But there's something about imperfection that is perfection. Like, like not everything is supposed to be the same, and it's okay that it isn't. And like, obviously with a braise, like you want it to be a braise, but you should also know how to do it without doing it in a sous vide.
Yeah. Understood. Yeah,
it's like cooking fucking eggs.
It's like when we made mortadella at the Charter Oak. Not my recipe, but we used to make it just because it was a house thing, and we used to make it in the what the fuck is that oven? The combi oven, the famous one. I'm not forgetting these fucking names. I gotta get back in the kitchen.
Rationale?
Yeah, Rationale. What the fuck? I gotta get back in the kitchen. This is crazy. We used to make it in the Rationale, and sometimes they would oxidize. And so I was like, what about grandmas that are doing this shit in like an oven that doesn't have, just like cooking this shit in water and like having perfect mortadella? And we're over here struggling with state-of-the-art equipment. And so it's like, I think it's time to just go back to the way we used to do things a little bit. Like, I always ask, like, when did we grow too much? Like, right? There's success, and then there's like too much success. So like, what is that? And like, I just think we shouldn't modernize every practice of the kitchen just because it's like the thing to do now.
Well, I think that's the thing where now chefs are realizing, like, fuck, like there's no one to cook anymore, because those principles and foundation of cooking and like the expectation of now being in kitchens is still that expectation it used to be, but that process doesn't exist. It's like it's cutting corners, but it's like for instance, like a great example was like I worked with a cook once. He worked somewhere else, and there was a recipe to make carrot puree, right? And it was like completely grammed out. The whole thing, the method, everything. Sous chef talked him through, like, this is how we do it. he goes and puts those ingredients in a fucking bag. And literally, he purees it, and I taste it, and I'm like, I had no idea he put it in a bag. But I could tell that it was cooked in a bag because it just never developed that flavor. And like, you know, he didn't even cook out the fucking onions. Like, he just put everything in a fucking bag.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. Like, slicing things a certain way, the way you cook it, the way you develop flavors, like adding a little bit of salt and tasting and that growth, like, that doesn't exist. And if it existed, you'd find more people either in it or not. And it's like, people just don't want to work like that. And it's like,
consistency's boring.
But like, how the like, what, like, my thing is, like, you see these young cooks and they expect to be, you know, our mentors or like, you know, our peers. And it's like, they don't want to work like that. They want to work like 30 hours a week, and then they expect to be this next big thing because that's what everybody tells them that they could be.
Yeah.
And, you know, and that modernization. And then every chef out there is like giving that modernization, and then they're wondering why they can't get fucking cooks to work. And then, but my biggest thing is like, what do these people expect to do when they're 40? Where are they going to be then? Like, do you really want a career in this? And it's like, well, fuck, like, as chefs and as people, like, we're supposed to be the mentors for the next generation. It's like, what the fuck is going to happen to restaurants when it's that generation operating?
Yeah.
You know? And that's the scary part.
Yeah. I think we got to bet on the younger kids.
Yeah, the generation underneath them.
Yeah. It's great.
Like my daughter.
Yeah, exactly.
She knows how to roll out pasta and she can make garganella. She knows how to cut strawberries and she's clean and organized when she does it. That's the fucking generation. And she's only 6.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. It's like, she sees that. Like, my kids are fortunate enough where they eat really well. And they eat really well because obviously, like, their dad cooks. So they have that privilege. But it's not always fancy. You know, I spoil them with shit a lot. But a lot of it is like super simple, and they learn. Mm-hmm. They're learning about food, and they've grown up with me working so much that, you know, like my daughter says she wants to be like a chef, mm-hmm. you know, and honestly, like, she is so driven even at 6, like, and creative, like, you know, maybe, but she could literally do whatever she wants. But yeah, that's the generation underneath the generation of us, like, is like, the underneath us is like, they're terrible. They really are. And then the generation underneath them is like maybe different, you know, because they're growing up. They're growing up COVID and after.
Yeah.
So they're going to be fucking more badass.
Apocalypse.
Yeah, apocalyptic children.
Apocalyptic children. Remember, it's like when you were born, the world was ending. Well, fuck. Thanks, Chef, for being on the show. I think we had a very interesting conversation that people will find some inspiration from. And, I just thank you for inviting me in your home.
Yeah, thanks for coming here and talking to my rambling, you know, bullshit.
Dude, it's all good, bro. You gotta get the stories out there because, like, who's doing that? No one.
No one's doing it.
You know, it's time to tell these stories, bad or good, or, you know, it's sometimes things are hard to hear, you know, but whatever, because it's true, right?
Yeah, it's true experiences.
It's like, at the end of the day, it is what it is, and, you know.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully people hear that and they've experienced something like that, or they have feelings like that, but they're afraid to, like, express themselves.
Yeah.
And, like, that's the thing. It's like, we need that. Like, we need people